When you took the kids back to see the service station in the space, that
Yeah.
part of the book is really special because you reminded me. So I was 9 years old when my dad took me back to the home he grew up in. And my dad's home was probably as big, his home was as big as this room, like cut off that part as well, like none of that hallway. So his whole house was this big. And it was in India where he grew up. And so he took me there. And I remember like walking outside, there was a lot of like trash on the floor. There were like rats running around. There were cockroaches inside. This big bat flew on my face. Like I had my Batman moment. Like I was like, I was a 9-year-old kid and this bat flew on my face and it was disgusting. My dad put it out my eyes. And then we went in this house and it was literally this big. And I remember my dad was telling me how they shared like a toilet with like 30 families. Like he grew up in like, you know, immense poverty. And it was just one of the best experiences of my life going there as a 9-year-old. So when I was reading about you taking your kids back to your grandpa's service station, the space you grew up, I was like, I know how formative that's been for me. Walk us through what their reaction was and your reasoning actually.
Everything that you just said is so valid. And if I'm gonna be very honest, like when you're a kid, you only know what you know, right? And so the times that something was going on and I seen my grandfather pull that wad of money out of his pocket, I used to start tripping. That's a lot of money to me, to anybody. And so like as a kid, you want things. I mean, when we was in the car and we went to McDonald's or something, right? Or say you went to Wendy's. I don't care where you went. Like if you went to Wendy's, we want the biggie size fries, right? Like we want the extra large fries and the extra large soda. We couldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like my parents just wasn't doing it because we didn't have the money to do it. And as a kid, I watched movies too. Did you ever see Richie Rich?
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah,
so
great movie,
you see Richie Rich, you see that movie, what was it, Blank Check?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like as a kid, it's like, dang, I'm trying to see what that be like.
Yeah.
Right? And so, of course, you want things, things, but the biggest thing that I learned is when I got to the NBA, right? And you can get those things, they don't complete you at all. Like, they don't. But what you start to realize is that with the money and the finance, at times you have an opportunity to change other people's lives. So that's when the work really just sets in. And it's like, all right, I want to keep working because I want to keep providing and helping others or whatnot. So when it came to my kids, they live a totally different life than me and my wife ever did, right? And so this is so crazy. Like I'm picturing these real conversations that I have with my kids because for me and my wife, like I wanted something different for my parents, right? And the hardest thing is trying to figure out how to get my kids motivated because they can't get me and my wife a new house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just can't. And so it's constantly just making sure that they have their own motivation. What's going to motivate them? So I wanted them to see why I am the way I am. Because sometimes they just see mom and dad or they just see me, but they got a chance to really go see why I get mad if the trash ain't taken out. You know, because growing up, I was having to cut the grass. We were having to fold clothes, wash clothes, do all these different type things. So that's one of the challenges as a parent of how do you instill some of these things in your kids?
Yeah, and throughout the book, you see just how conscious and intentional you are about the kids. And again, I think there's this healthy balance where like there's a lot of love for them and you get that. It's not their fault that they didn't have that experience. Like, yeah, but at the same time, you want to help them. And I think that it's such a hard balance to do, but it sounds like because you and Jada are taking it so thoughtfully and intentionally that I just see it all the time. Like the amount of celebrity kids who also feel the pressure to be like their parents in their field. That's already a pressure. Second of all, there's a feeling, which I don't think a lot of people realize, but there's a lot of feeling of guilt for kids to be like, well, I didn't deserve this, or my friends don't have this, or like, I didn't do it. And then on the other side, which you get is the entitlement as well. So it's so much to deal with.
It's so much that goes into it, man. And I think the only thing for us that we've always tried to do is at least communicate with them and don't make them guess or try to figure it out on their own. And even though I'm here somewhat giving advice or whatnot or talking about my memoir, I'm always looking for advice. Some of the people that I've looked to as mentors or whatnot, most of our conversations have been on parenting because this thing don't come with a manual. You know, it doesn't. And I'm constantly learning, adapting, trying to adjust because kids for sure will like test you, you know, and I think it's been the best test that I've ever had because they show you how to love unconditionally, and it's the best ride.
Yeah, the part in the book that really got me was when because I don't have kids yet, and me and my wife have been together for around 10 years now, and we moved from London to New York to LA, and now we live in LA, but the last 7 years have been moving around and, you know, in our own way. Obviously, I'm not moving how you are, but still kind of that feeling of not having a home.
Right.
Now we know we live in LA and we're happy there, but I often think about like how my kids will have a different life to the life I had, even in, so that the point I'm picking out of your book is when you're leaving LA and you're talking to little Chris about it, and he's really upset about it, like, because he's made his friends and he's gonna miss him, and you can relate to that as a kid. It doesn't matter who your dad is.
Right.
It's like, as a kid, it's like your friends are everything. You're scared about what it's gonna be like going to a new school. I think that's when you're moving from LA to Houston.
Yep.
And you're feeling this discomfort. And I love what you say to him where you're like, I need you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing to hear a dad say like, I need you. It wasn't like you need to do this for me or you gotta, you know, just fix up and be strong and man up. And how did you recognize that was the conversation?
And Jay, I'm very visual. So even as you're talking to me, like I'm envisioning when it happened. Like, we were in my office at my house in Calabasas, and I'll never forget his face, ever. It was tough. And like I said, I grew up around the same friends, right? Like me and my brother got a group chat with our homies back home that we grew up with. And that is probably one of the coolest things about my childhood. Whereas I know to each his own. Some people moved around a lot and it gave them the ability to be flexible to different cultures and this and that. But it was cool having a home base. And so when we left and Chris said that, it was hard. It was really hard, which is why we ultimately made the decision when we went from Houston to OKC to let them stay in LA. And it's always going to be hard. That's what you understand, is that there's no perfect life, there's no perfect family, because in trying to give them stability, now the last 4 years I've been without them. You know, so I think what always ends up happening is somebody got to sacrifice. Right. And if anybody gonna sacrifice as far as my family go, I'm gonna make sure it's me. You know, and that's how we got to where we are now.
Yeah.